Okay, back on the Sylvania set. Where we're at now is I've got the chassis pulled out. You can see it right here. It's kind of interesting. It's just basically a rack system here. But all that was required to get the chassis out was a couple of bolts back down in this area here underneath the cabinet. There were 4 of them. You took those out, disconnected the CRT, disconnected the high voltage lead, and then also the speaker is hardwired in, and so I just disconnected it from the cabinet and it came out as well. So the only thing left connected is the yoke, and I could take the yoke off, but at this point I'm not going to do that. I may end up doing that later, but right now I have a little leeway away from the cabinet with manipulating the chassis around, so I'm not going to bother with disconnecting the yoke right now. Really an interesting looking chassis. Kind of when I pulled it out, it kind of reminds me of an oven, like you could put a hot dog in here or something and cook it, which leads to a point about this chassis. I'm not an engineer by trade, but it just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me that you have horizontal output, damper tubes, your 3 hottest running tubes, your power supply and your high voltage cage right here that's going to be producing a lot of heat and going directly up to this circuit board. So that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. If you look at a lot of the late 50s sets that started employing printed circuit boards in their designs, you know, like a Predictor comes to mind, where everything's in a small cabinet. At least this is still on the base of the chassis or side by side to the lower chassis. So, I mean, there's enough heat generated on these things that cause problems with reliability on these sets just from tubes being up here. So I've done a lot of cleaning on this circuit board just to get a better look at it. And you can see there a lot of Q-tips and a lot of use some lacquer thinner. And I don't know if you can tell on the video or not, but you can look at some of these tube sockets, and there's quite a bit of black around those tube sockets. So they've gotten pretty hot at some point in time, as well as some of those resistors that are nearby those. So I'll be checking those real close. The tube sockets themselves look like they're in pretty good shape. Those of you that have worked on Predictas and some of these sets before know that there was a high failure rate with tube sockets on those sets, but these appear to be in pretty good shape. At least they are right now. So this is the first part that I'm going to work on this chassis is this printed circuit board. We're going to try to take it off here in a minute and see what we can do with it. But before we do that, let me give you a sneak peek of the underside of the chassis. If I can get it manipulated here where we can look at it. And you can see we've got some big power resistors up here. There's one in here I saw on the schematic that's rated for 20 watts. There's a Black Beauty there. He'll be coming out for sure. Sell him to an audiophile for 50 bucks. Then we have a lot of wax caps. And all these need to come out. A lot of them are oozing. There's one down there in the corner that's really, check him out. He's really lost a lot of his guts. I can't even tell what value that is. And some of these, come on camera focus, there we go. You can see the wax is coming out of a lot of them. I'm pretty sure all those are going to be testing open. And then these big filter caps. Got a big 4-section one here. This electrolytic, we'll restuff that. And then this is 150 microfarad at 200 volt. That's going to be changed as well. Filter choke. The choke's got a little wax on him too. And then the selenium rectifiers, I know there's a lot of people that will immediately yank those out in place of new modern diodes. I won't be doing that. I will leave those in there at risk of them burning out and stinking up the joint. But as a standard rule, I don't just automatically replace those. As long as they're working, and it appears that they are working because the set's working. So that's the underside of the chassis. I'll be saving that for later. What I first want to get at is this printed circuit board. And it appears to just set on top of this chassis. There's bolts that hold it on. And this is very similar to all the other designs of the time that I've seen. There are connections, wiring connections that are just wire wound connections. This looks like the video line here. And that's the trouble with a lot of these servicing a lot of these type of circuit boards is it's a real pain in the butt to unwrap all of those wires and then getting them back on correctly. So what I've done is I've taken a lot of reference photos, but I want to see if I can get this off and be able to get underneath and service the board and cheat basically and not unwrap all those wires. Now, in the course of flipping this thing around as many times as I'm probably going to have to do with dealing with getting rid of all these paper caps and wax caps that are on this board, I'm anticipating that I'm probably going to break at some point something loose. And if that's the case, then I'll simply just solder it back to the post and move on. But hopefully I can do this one-handed. Let's see if we can. It does not appear to be soldered on there. The one thing that I discounted was the fact that this tuning knob, it appears that it'd have to be lifted all the way over that to flip it over. So it looks like I might have to disconnect all these leads, which it's not that big a deal. Looks like the video from the tuner here and another connection from the tuner here, and a couple of other wires to be disconnected, and then that should pop right off. So yeah, it looks as if I'm going to have to disconnect to get this circuit board up and off, but I think it'll be better and easier to work on. I think it'll be kind of difficult to solder. Thought about laying it on its side to work on it, but there's not a whole lot of leads on this thing, so I think what I'll end up doing is disconnecting the wiring. Looks like there might be a dozen wires that I'll have to disconnect. What I'm most concerned about is those traces. I'd love to get my Hacko 808 desoldering gun out after this stuff, but I'm just afraid it'll rip those traces right off the board. So I'll be doing the very slow process of just heating up, clipping these components out, and then heating up the lead, and hopefully it'll just fall right out. And it'll make it easier to check these resistors by pulling one end of the resistor out. So, okay, well, that's where I'm at. I'm going to work on getting this board disconnected and then move the rest of it away, and then we can get this board out and take a deeper look at it. I do know it has K networks in it. I believe there's 4. This is one, this is one, there's one hiding over here, and then here's one right here that looks more like what you would encounter in a Predicta. It's a combination of resistors and capacitors all molded into one component. And I think there's 2 or 3 involved in the sound circuitry, and then one, if I'm not mistaken, it's this one that's in the sync circuitry, which, if I remember correctly, is one that's a common problem on Predicta sets. So hopefully those will be okay. Those, I hope, are that will be the last thing that I'll be working on the board. And I'm hoping, unlike the Predictas, it's not too big of a deal to not replace them, be able to reinstall everything, do a test, and then if I need to get back into it later, I can. You don't really have that option with some of the other sets, because you've got 20 wires to unwrap. There's no way to service it from underneath, so you have to make a call while you have the board out to replace everything that you're going to replace, and then reinstall it and hope like hell it works. So I'm going to have that to some degree on this, but I don't think it'll be a big deal if I have to pull it out again and do some more work. But certainly all the caps, I'm anticipating a majority of the resistors, and there's a lot of resistors in here, I'll replace. The ceramic caps, yeah, I'll be leaving them alone. They're more than likely okay. But these wax paper caps, whatever they are, they're coming out. That's an electrolytic there. And then, of course, this electrolytic will be restuffed. Okay, when I come back, hopefully I'll have this board out.